See, it says we're live, but we're not actually on the YouTube yet. All right, Ms. Williams, I'm ready.
Peaceful greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining the Countering RWS Book Club as we discuss the United Independent Compulsory Code System concept by Neely Fuller Jr., the revised edition 2016, and the Compulsory Counter Racist and Codified Word Guide that was published in 2010. You will find these books at producejustice.com. Information and guide for compensatory thought, speech, and action in replacing racism, white supremacy with justice, a balance between people. Today, we will continue our discussion on part 2 of the 8th area of human activity, sex, on page 291 through 308. I want to make mention that all 9 areas of human activity start with the introduction that reads, the following pages present suggestions that pertain to what a victim of racism, non-white people, should or should not choose to do in the areas of economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, and counter-war. The code is not a dictatorship. Any suggestions in the guide, any suggestions in the code that you like or choose to follow, do so and track your progress as it helps you solve problems. Our goal is to solve problems without making any. Now I want to present to you our host, known as 0526, and our panel of guests as we discuss the 8th area of human activity, sex. 0526.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. Getting started, I think this part from 291 is written in bold, which states conflict of one form or another cannot be avoided. Explanation: the best that can be done is for the conflict to be minimized. Avoiding all unnecessary and non-constructive contact with each other can best minimize the conflict. Through the system of white supremacy, racist men and racist women collectively have a great influence on the ways that non-white males and non-white females interact with each other. The greater the influence and or the greater the contact that racist men and racist women have, the greater the confusion, animosity, mistreatment, and dissatisfaction and general conflict that non-white males and females will have with each other. Conflict and confusion is sure to occur in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war/counter-war. As long as racism and white supremacy exists, it is correct to blame the white supremacists for all of the problems that exist between non-white males and non-white females, and most certainly all of the conflicts. I think this point is really, really important because a good remedy to fights amongst non-white people who are attempting to have a relationship or an arrangement is to understand that all of their problems, all of their bickerings is to be blamed, well, it's the fault of racist men and racist women. So I think it would be correct for couples, people in relationships or in arrangements to attempt, of course, to minimize conflict. Minimize contact and minimize conflict. And once we are in a state where we are away from whatever our mate is, and once we're away from them, that should be a time to think and remind ourselves that this fight is non-constructive, and this fight is the result of being totally dominated by the system of racism and white supremacy. like this dynamic between non-white people who are attempting arrangement. This was a highly sophisticated plan that was created before any of us got to this planet. And as long as racism and white supremacy exists, these sort of conflicts will continue. So I think it's really important to just keep focus on racist men and racist women. They are the reason why the Black male may not be able to do all that the non-white female would like, or racist man and racist woman are the reasons that the non-white female can't do all the things the non-white male would like. So it's really important to keep the blame where it should be placed on, which is racist man and racist woman, and do all that we can to correct the issue by solving the problem. But I think a good remedy for conflict is just that focus, that reminder that we're fighting or having conflict because of racist men and racist women. And yeah, anyone else like to have anything to share?
I do have something to add to that. When I was reading on page 291, just about male and female interactions, and I thought about what we always say, like even you just mentioned it, about how, I'm going to call it like white supremacy, or the systems aren't built for male and female, Black or non-white male and females to be together, specifically Black males, though I think about when I'm thinking about this topic. It could be because I'm a Black woman, but thinking about how they are continuously like separated from the Black woman, excuse me. And that is the main one I think about that's not often talked about, is through like social media. And I think this comes up a lot because I don't have social media right now, but then people tell me stories like, oh, this is what people are talking about on social media. And I'm just like, that is just so terrible. And it's always someone who identifies as a Black male, like trashing a Black woman, and then vice versa. But this is something that is highly like a tool used to keep the Black male and women separated. And it's almost like no one sees anything about it because they see it as funny and like, oh, that's so funny, that's so true, or oh, ha, 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 like I can relate. And it's very like terroristic. Like no one is providing solutions, but instead almost doing the work for the white supremacists themselves. And that can be in all areas, but specifically with this area. And even just like how people engage in like sexual activities and what the phrases are now. Like people are willing to settle for what they call a like friends with benefits or a situationship just for purely sexual interactions, or just nothing else other than doing what the white man is telling them to do. And I think it's just like this whole idea of seeing Black women and men together as a joke, and almost thinking when you see them like, oh, they won't succeed. So it's just so many thoughts I had like reading this and going into just like sexual intercourse. I do think about just the interactions between Black females and men, like together. It's almost like there has to be, it stops my train of thought. We're like, oh, okay. Like there has to be some sort of like, oh, we need to like, if you don't have sex with me, like we don't like each other. Or, you know, it's kind of interesting because you have these talks. I don't know how many people have talks about things, but I'm a woman and people always talk to me about these things. And I'm just very curious because that's like women I guess like to talk about. It's very interesting. But one person told me once, it was very interesting, but one person told me once that they wouldn't, like it's not a day until they have sex with this person, but it's just purely to say I had sex with this person. So it's just very interesting. And I think all of this has stemmed from like obviously the white person's message, but a lot has to do with like social media and how it's seen as like a joke, and people almost like hype it up. And then they go on there and they talk about oh, let's have a conversation about love. I'm a love influencer now, our relationship influencer. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very well said, Miss Nana. I also noticed that phenomenon of the black males and black females constantly at some sort of in conflict with one another on the social media, and how it was really popular to say things that like all men are trash and stuff like that without any context given to the system of racism and white supremacy. And I suspect it's because racist man and racist woman, they control black culture, ghetto culture, whatever you want to call it, non-white culture. They dictate and control this culture. So we have black culture, non-white culture, the reality of literally the males and females. That is our culture being in conflict with one another. It's and ghetto glorification, ghetto culture, black culture also does this thing where like it allows white supremacy to be maintained and refined with the help of our own brain trashing. And like for example, and in the area of entertainment, the music that non-whites produce, calling non-white females bitches and hoes, that is a refinement of white supremacy using the non-white female vagina as something that means weak or useless. Like I'm reminded of a Young Thug song called "Pussy," which is just him calling black males pussy, which is supposed to make them, which his song means like weak, like you're something weak, and I'm gonna kill you because you're weak and I can. So this sort of behavior is how racism and white supremacy is refined. And it also goes much deeper than that because white people get their hands on this sort of content and then they use it to practice white supremacy. Like I saw a race soldier playing this rap song on Twitter, and a rap song is just a guy repeating over and over, a black male repeating over and over that I hate niggas, I hate niggas. And it's just ghetto glorification has been trained in non-white people, and until this is corrected, we will continue to have conflict amongst non-white males and non-white females. Yes, Mr. Kwaku, and then Naya, I see you have another comment.
No, y'all can go, and I'll go.
Oh, I just wanted to add to what 0526 was mentioning. And one of the things too that when you're talking about this idea to, well, not idea, but this thing that's always said about like even just black men in general and how they're like, if you date a black man, they always ask you like, oh, how was his penis? Was it big? You know, and it's like this almost like sexualizing black men, but they do it all over the place. And even in just like films and almost like this whole like black man is just like good for sexual tools. But it also stems from the idea of back in the day, I'm trying to remember, I can't give you a date right now, when they just like that whole pandemic, I call it pandemic, of just like falsely accused black men of raping white women. And it still goes on, but it's just like this whole like thing that's just almost in like this never ending cycle because they see black men as tools. But I love how in the book, Mr. Fuller provides everyone with this idea of like, let the woman basically say they want it before any action, just to keep the black men or even just non-white men in general from like being accused of false actions. But I wanted to say that, just the sexualization of black men.
Yeah, reducing a whole person to a penis or a vagina is one example of how racist man and racist woman definitely hyper omega sexualize non-white people. Mr. Kwaku.
Yes, thank you. Very well said. So this first section, was very informative, and it just got me thinking so much about what could have been. Just following these simple codified interactions. So starting with the male-female interaction, I think on the top of 292, where he said, forgive me if you already read this, O5, but I won't read the whole thing. But he said when he talks about males, he's talking about males in particular. He says, "Do not ask any female to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with you. Always wait until she asks you to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with her." Then, scrolling down a little bit, he says, "Males do not attempt to engage in any act of sexual intercourse unless the non-white female whom you have indicated a desire to engage in sexual intercourse with does all of the following: willfully, deliberately, and voluntarily remove all coverings and all ornaments and adornments from her body and presents herself completely naked within your complete, open, and easy view. And while completely naked, she willfully, deliberately, and voluntarily approaches you and touches her body to yours." So, I reading this, I was just thinking about, this whole Me Too movement, how this entire, what is like the modern day lynching for Black men, non-white men, could have all been avoided. And it gets me thinking about towards like when I was younger, and even in college, really, high school, college, how it was almost like a competition to go and seek out women and get them to try to have sex with you. A lot of times it's the male person initiating the contact and initiating the sex, asking, and a whole slew of consequences and issues just arise from that problem. These like how the way Neely Fuller's laying it out, he really is like exposing all the issues that we have when it involves sexual intercourse and or sexual play. On 293, when he says, "When a person mentions an intention to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with you, ask the following questions." And instantly, the first one, I would, I was almost floored because I don't. It's like it's something so obvious, but something that's often not brought to attention. It says, "Do you truly want to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with me? Or do you want to know that you can if you want to?" And this one kind of hit me hard. I being a victim of racism, but also oftentimes the non-white female, kind of keeping, it just kind of goes back to how in tatters our relationships are, right? It's almost deemed unconstructed to have a friendly relationship with a female now. Most of the time when you're hanging around a woman, it's because you want to have sex with her. But a lot of times that woman, she'll know that, but she won't say anything, and she'll just keep you around. So it's like, do you want to know that you can if you want to? So just that fact that the woman is just keeping the male person around just because she knows she can have sex with them at any time, but she has no desire, right? Just completely wasting everybody's time and energy, and honestly being very dishonest about her intentions. And then I also like number 5, where it says, "What do you intend to do with me or about me after you have engaged in sexual intercourse or sexual play with me?" So I think we have a very huge culture of, the one night stands and the hit it or quit it type culture, where you even online dating, where you meet somebody one time and you have sex with them and you may never ever see this person again or ever talk to them again. And that is really just disgusting. That I don't think that's the proper way to have a relationship with anybody. I've always thought of sex as kind of like a transaction. So every time when you have sex with somebody, like that person gets a part of you, a piece of you. So when you open yourself up and you're constantly opening yourself up to multiple people to just, for lack of a better word or phrase, be inside of you or get parts of you, you know, I don't see any kind of anything constructive coming out of that. So, you know, I don't. Neely Fuller wrote this in 2016. So I think
1984.
This part in 1984.
The concept
Wow.
in 1984, but much before 1984, it was in the process of being written. The revised edition was published in 2016.
Well, thank you for that. Well, you know, it just kind of, it's almost like Neely Fuller could see once again, what Neely Fuller is seeing the problems arising before they even start, you know? And it's just like all of these things have come to pass, and it's like the lack of questions. Nobody's asking questions. I'll stop there, but.
Thank you, Mr. Kwaku. You commented on this bit on 292. I wish you had read all of it so I could give it more context. So I'm gonna
Please read it.
Yeah, I shall. So on 292, and this should be really, really simple for people to understand, but racist men and racist women have trained us to be such monsters and monstrosities that concepts like this totally go out of the window. I hate to use metaphor, but I'm just gonna read it and comment. So it says, males, I'm gonna read the entire page, by the way, so it's gonna be a lot of reading. Males, do not ask any female to engage in sexual intercourse or sexual play with you. Always wait until she asks you to engage in sexual intercourse or sexual play with her. Explanation. 1, as long as white supremacy racism exists, no person, white or non-white, is correctly qualified to ask for or to engage in any act of sexual intercourse or sexual play with any non-white female. 2, according to compensatory counter-racist logic, it is best and correct for non-white females to have complete control over their sexual activities. 3, since racist men and racist women, white supremacists collectively, are involved in causing non-white females to be subject to the system of white supremacy, and since non-white males are guilty of allowing both themselves and non-white females to be subject to racist men and racist women, no people in the known universe are correctly qualified to receive the sexual favors from any non-white female. It is therefore correct that non-white females make both their first and final decision to choose which persons, only non-white, they will or will not engage in sexual intercourse or sexual play with. This helps to eliminate all misunderstandings and all conflicts in regards to confusion about wanted and unwanted sexual intercourse or sexual play. Males, do not attempt to engage in any act of sexual intercourse unless the non-white female with whom you have indicated a desire to engage in sexual intercourse with does all of the following willfully, deliberately, and voluntarily. Remove all coverings and ornaments and adornments from her body and presents herself completely naked within your complete, open, and easy view. And while completely naked, she willfully, deliberately, and voluntarily approaches you and touches her body to yours. Note, the aforementioned codified procedure for probable sexual interaction should help to minimize actions that may be regarded as unwanted sexual contact, rape, sexual assault, etc. So this would save a lot of males and non-white people in general a lot of time and energy. And I think this is a really codified procedure. I think if we were correct thinking people, we would understand that females, women have they control access to sex. I believe that is what the nature, the universe has intended. But racist man and racist woman, they a long time ago started this thing called domination. And domination is using your time and energy to dominate a person through rape, through torture. And white people have trained everyone on the planet to participate in their behaviors. So they have trained the entire planet to be rapists, and they have trained the entire planet to manipulate each other. So we manipulate each other to having sex with us. We bamboozle one another to have sex with us, and kind of sometimes even beg for females to have sex with us, which is all totally incorrect. But that's because we have been trained to be this way. So sex is always the female's choice. They control access to that. I think this part of the code may be a little hard for the more confused folks to comprehend, but I really appreciated reading this one because I've gotten a lot of flack from my some associates because I've always been one to have a lot of associates who were female, and they would get like confused because I wasn't interested in having sex with them. And that was always interesting to me. I didn't know what was causing these interactions, like why I would be looked down upon for not wanting to have sex with my so-called friends. It would always be weird to me. And now I understand why. It's because race and white supremacy has totally confused and brain trashed everyone, myself included. And yeah, unless you are trying to have codified sex, then can't be. It will probably not be that constructive. And sex is something that I believe should be constructive and pleasurable for both parties, for both people. But and race and white supremacy, that's not always the case. I've definitely have regretted many sexual advances I've allowed females to take against myself. So really something to think about. This entire page, 292, definitely something I think non-white people should think about. Mr. Dan, do you have a comment to share?
Yes, my comments were also in regards to page 292. I'm not going to read it since it's already been read, but the part at the top where it says how non-white females control access to sex. A thought that came to mind is something that non-white females do, or just females in general. This thing called "I was sending him signals" or something like that. I think some people should be familiar with that phrase or something, where a non-white female female finds a certain male attractive and they start doing extra stuff, and then when he doesn't attempt to hit on her or something like that, she's like, I don't get it. I was sending him signals. And especially in regards to like things Clayton was saying and the whole the Me Too movement and the system of white supremacy. Yeah, it just is messed up male female interactions to where males are kind of like don't want to interact with females in that way, even though they're attracted to females. It just kind of makes you kind of hesitant to pursue them in a area 8 kind of way. And yeah, that's what I had in regards to page 292. Like, I don't know if confused non-white females will understand that point. Like, hey, they control access to whether sex happens or not, not the male. But yeah, that whole sending signals thing, that's not constructive. That's all I have for right now.
Really well said, and I agree. I am very I'm very victimized, very stupid. So I have experienced being so-called sent signals and not understanding what was happening and being expected to react to those signals in a way that the non-white female would have liked. But I, words are what we should use to communicate, not signals are like subliminals, to say the least. Thank you for that, Mr. Dan. I think this point is also very, very important. Could save a lot of conflict involving non-white males and non-white females. And this should just be something that we get into a practice of doing, which is being honest with ourselves and each other, especially those we are attempting to take to the bedroom. 293, the code states, question, what is the best and correct way for non-white males and non-white females to start a constructive, intimate sexual relationship with each other? Answer, reveal everything about each other before the first act of a sexual intercourse or sexual play with each other, including revealing everything each has ever done, tried to do, or thought about doing in regards to each area of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And I remember a common occurrence in my previous arrangements is it's the non-white female would have very, very little to talk about, and I would be the one so-called carrying the conversation, like, and it got so bad that I would literally like write down questions to ask the non-white female. And I really, really wish I had encountered the code book many, many years ago to save myself a lot of time and energy. But people in arrangements and relationships, it's very common for them to be like, oh, we don't have anything to talk about. If you approach the relationship with this codified mindset, and there would be a lot to talk about, so much to talk about, and not only will it won't just be non-constructive conversation, but it will actually be a conversation that they can use to, I don't know, maybe create a constructive relationship, because far too many non-white males and females are in relationships that it's just constant conflict, constant bickering, constant fighting, and that is not any sort of arrangement that we should be in at all, especially if we don't have any means of minimizing the content, the conflict, or understanding why the conflict keeps occurring, which is because of the system of racism and white supremacy. Really, really like this part of the code. Wish I had encountered it much sooner, but can always use it now. I don't know who raised their hand first, so we'll go Miss B, and then Mr. Kwaku, and then Miss Williams.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me on the platform. Going back to page 292, it makes me think about like how we're not honest with each other. I'm not saying everybody here. I'm just okay. I'll just speak for myself. How we're not honest with each other, what our true intentions are, what we want, and what I like about the code is that they have so many questions. Things that we could use and pull the truth out or get us really talking and thinking, especially thinking, even if you don't have an answer. And it's weird, like how I was raised. I'll speak for myself. How I was raised, that you're not supposed to be so forward. You're not supposed to reveal so much. That's being considered like fast, or like let him want you and chase you, and it's really supposed to be the other way around according to the code. And not even a chase, it's just I'm supposed to, let it be known and ask questions, and you ask questions as well, and just be more upfront and honest. And that's what I like about the code, that it teaches you how to be upfront and honest. And that's it. Thank you.
Well said, Ms. Williams.
I too enjoyed the fact, but I'm going to pull from page 294, where it starts. It says, when choosing each other as sexual mates, promise each other that you will never do the following in regards to your interaction with each other and with others. Number one, do not say anything to deceive each other. Now, I fully agree with that, because so many relationships that I have seen was built out of total dishonesty, never really telling the truth about why you really wanted to have sexual relationship. And it was just a bunch of lies. And then those lies became more lies on top of lies, and her lies with his lies, and lies, lies, lies. So it is going to be very hard to have any type of relationship that's built on lies. That's why I really appreciate the code, because it teaches you to learn to be honest and to be truthful in your dealings with your associates and people who you may be considering to be sexual. Because once a lie is told, the trust is broken. Whatever trust you might have had, that lie can just totally destroy, because then they realize, okay, if you lied about this and this is small, what else have you lied to me about? So I like how the code allows you to question and ask the very things that you would want to know, and without having to wait after the sexual encounter. And I think it's better and more open to have the questions first, because then you get to see if this person is really who I really want to have a sexual relationship with. Because so many times we have these relationships, or I can speak for myself. I've had relationships and marriages that I went into them with the wrong mindset. If I'd had the code to guide me, I would have known basically that I shouldn't have chose neither one of them, truthfully. But because I didn't have the code, I kept choosing men that really was not suited for me, that caused me to be mistreated, and maybe in some cases caused him to be mistreated as well. But I like the fact that you can be honest with the people that practice the code, and the honesty is what helps build the trust. And knowing that we are at war and trying to replace the system of racism, white supremacy, we need to know that we can trust each other. We really need that. That's something we've never had before, because we've always had the type of relationship where we constantly lied or were being lied to. But it's time that we stop all the lying, the faking, and the shaking, and just be who we are. Whoever you are, by you answering these questions, if the person is still interested in you, they're still going to be interested. But if you lie, you're only going to deceive them for them to find out later you're not who I thought you were. So I really like the fact of being honest. And number two, it says, we're not to ever make promises that we cannot or will not keep. We tend to do that too, sometimes wanting to please people. We make promises. And I think some of us do have good intentions, that maybe we really do want to keep the promise, but something may come up that we're not able to do it. But that was your word that went out that you would do it. So at least if you can't keep the promise, make sure that the person understand it was your intention to keep it, but this may have happened. But it makes you to be even more cautious to, when you get ready to make promises, to think about it before you do it, because it's a possibility you may not be able to fulfill it. So it's better to say, if I'm able to do that. I think that's a better word to use, instead of saying I promise and then find out later you're not able to keep that. So I found this section very interesting, and I've learned so much, and it's given me a new mindset about how to interact. I mean, when we dealt with politics, that helped me a lot dealing with people relations, but when you put the politics, the people relations with the sex, it helps you to better define what you really want in a relationship with a counter racist, because that's the most important thing, is being able to continue to fight in the battle to replace racism, white supremacy with justice, but doing it with a mate or a partner of a person that you can trust, that knows you, they have your back to the best that they can, and you have their back to the best that you can, because we are still in the system of racism, white supremacy, and it's going to be difficult to have each other's back 100% of the time. I mean,
Very, very well said. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Yeah, I called like these 13 points. I call this like the do's and don'ts of relationships slash arrangements. I think number 12 and 13, and I think these are really important as well, which number 12 says receive more than you give to each other. Number 13, name call, curse, be discourteous, or commit violence against the other. These 2 points, well, all of these points can do wonders in minimizing and reducing conflict. Yeah, and I just reading this section, I just get the flashbacks of all the incorrect arrangements I've seen involving Black people and other non-white people. I'm like, damn, these people just had a code or just had any kind of awareness that treating your mate in that manner is not correct, and it's not gonna produce anything of constructive value. Reminds me, and I'm reminded, point number 5 of the do's and don'ts of arrangements slash relationships. Produce offspring except by a guaranteed agreement with one another in advance to make provisions for all of the needs of that offspring. And I'm sure we're aware that the majority of non-white people do not do this at all. Black child parents, the ISIS papers. Really, really, really tragic, to say the least. Sex should be seen as something that is very, very serious and something that we should not rush into. But the system of white supremacy has trained us to see sex as just like, what do we do that is careless? We see sex as something not that meaningful. You know, we could go out and have sex like it's, I don't know, like it's putting on a pair of shoes. You know, we don't think too much about it. We do it and we keep it pushing, not understanding how powerful sex is in the system of racial and white supremacy. Did I want to read this part? Yeah, I think I'm gonna. Yeah, I think this is this section right here is what reminded me how we have literally created made sex a joke. We don't see it as something serious, something that we see it as something throwaway. We well, like Kwaku mentioned earlier, we've been trained, males, non-white males in particular, that your sexual power is dictated by how many females you can convince, manipulate to have sex with you, and that's just really, 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 really incorrect. And there's like 130 questions in this section that we're gonna discuss. But the code says, before having sexual intercourse for the first time with that person, be willing to ask yourself the following and request that the person do the same. Without naming the names of others, am I willing to tell this person all of the details of every act of sexual intercourse and or anti-sexual, so-called homosexual intercourse that I have ever had? If the answer is no, do not have sexual intercourse with this person. Instead, meet with this person at least 3 times, with the two of you appearing completely naked and having firmly agreed not to touch each other, telling each other everything about each other without naming the names of others in regards to everything that each of you has ever done, everything that each of you wants to do, and everything that each of you plans to do in every area of activity, including economics, entertainment, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Explanation. 1, to help end all non-constructive shame and all hypocrisy, falsehood, pretense, arrogance, contempt, fear, self-deception, and phony exhaustion between non-white males and non-white females. 2, to help produce honesty and understanding between non-white males and non-white females through the revelation of truth in a manner that best promotes the production of justice, balance between people and correctness, balance between people and all creatures, things, etc. Before engaging in sexual intercourse and or sexual play, make certain that the answer to the following basic question is yes. Is the person non-white? So I really love how appreciate how the code makes sex serious again. You know, it almost becomes like a ritual before you even want to, before you almost have to do a ritual in the sense of like actually talking to the person for more than a couple of hours. It even mentions like talking to someone out and hang out with them while being with them for at least 200 days before even having sex with them. But this is something that would seem very, very bizarre to a more confused person. But if you understand how powerful sex is and how racist men and racist women have been dominating us through sex for possibly thousands of years, we would understand the importance of taking sex very, very, very serious and being serious about sex. Because when you're not serious about sex, when you make sex a joke, the joke is on you and the problems you will cause for yourself. And most importantly, the joke is on the offspring that you will potentially bring into the system unprepared and will just be more victimized. Mr. Kwaku and Mr. Dan.
Yes, I wanted to comment on, making sex a joke. I would wholeheartedly agree. I think a lot of it comes down to, what obviously the dominant, what the system, the racist white supremacist system is projecting at us all hours of the day. When you are watching most media, TV shows, movies, whatever, you don't really see any of this kind of codified behavior going on. I mean, the minute you get a non-white male, non-white female in the room together, not much time passed before their clothes are off and they're engaging in sexual intercourse. And growing up in this system, being trained and conditioned by the system, we tend to mimic that. I wanted to read this off of page 297. Where it says, question, according to compensatory counter-racist logic, when and how should sexual intercourse, sexual play, or intimate sexual communications take place between non-white males and non-white females? Compensatory, constructive, carnal communications. Answer, it is correct for such interaction to take place in accordance with one or more of the following. 1, when enacted according to the laws of his or her religion, and or 2, when enacted in support of speech and action associated with ending racism, white supremacy, and replacing it with justice. The non-white male and female must show that they are intimately interested in each other to the extent that they would have no objection to engaging in sexual intercourse, sexual play, and/or intimate sexual communications with each other by doing an exact combination of all of the following: agreeing to meet with each other alone in complete privacy and under comfortable conditions. During the meeting, both agree to present themselves to each other completely naked, all parts of each other's bodies completely uncovered, not touching each other's bodies at any time during the meeting, and not making any comments about each other's bodies or each other's nakedness, not engaging in any act of sexual intercourse and or sexual play with each other until both persons have met in the aforementioned manner for a period of not less than 200 days. So I wanted to bring attention to that last point in particular, because I read that and that was another thing that almost floored me. I really had to sit there and I had to read it again. He said not less than 200 days. That's over 6 months. I can't imagine being with another female in the room, a female person, being completely naked in the room and not, engaging in sexual intercourse for over 6 months. And that just is a huge testament to the brain trashing and the training and conditioning of the system of racism, white supremacy. I just couldn't wrap my head around it, but when he puts it forward, it's like these kinds of things are necessary. That's how you take such things as sexual intercourse seriously. It's not something that should be done at all hours of the day without thinking it through, without being constructive about it. So, that was something that, is very serious. And like Miss B said, it shows discipline. And I think that's what, us as non-white people are definitely lacking, is discipline in a lot of the areas of human activity. So that's it for me.
Very well said, sir. Mr. Dan?
Okay. Yeah, in regards to like that 200-day thing, yeah, that definitely is discipline. But one thing that comes to mind is sometimes in these arrangements or relationships, sometimes there's confusion between the male and female on if they're like an exclusive thing, like if they're not seeing anyone else, or if they can see anyone else. And there were some points in the Revised Expanded Edition and the 1984 edition I wanted to bring up. Is on page 294, one of the bullet points. It was number 8. It says, oppose one another choosing to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with other non-white persons. And then on page 295, there's also the numbered parts again. Number 9, it says, I insist on choosing your companions or associates. Then number 10, I insist on you not choosing my companions or associates. And then number 12, it says, I insist that you not engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with anyone else but me. And if you're going to be with someone for like 200 days, 6 months, like there should be like some sort of understanding that y'all are like exclusive. Because I mean, I don't know how many people you're gonna be looking at naked in the bedroom, but on page 197 of the 1984 edition, I didn't see this in the Revised Expanded Edition. It says, give most sexual attention and all sexual allegiance only to those victims of racism, non-white persons of opposite complementary sex, who to the best of their ability seek at all times to speak and act to resist and or eliminate racism, white supremacy. Reason, explanation. As long as racism, white supremacy exists, all sexual activity and all sexual allegiance should be between persons who try to spend most of the time resisting and or trying to eliminate racism. I really like that this point in the 1984 edition. I didn't see it, but maybe we'll have to try and keep an eye out and see if it pops up in the Revised Expanded Edition. The concept of sexual allegiance to another victim that's, at least attempting to do something about this system. Because, when you come into the, the code and whatnot, you're going to find that, you're not going to have too many associates, let alone maybe possibly of the opposite sex, to interact with. And especially, with the code, see tons of like non-white females, they're cute, but they're so brain trash. I don't want to pursue anything with them other than, possibly provide information. But I definitely like the whole sexual allegiance concept from the 1984 edition.
Yeah, something like that was mentioned earlier in this area where states like the non-white female should attempt to only have sex with non-white males who are attempting to replace white supremacy, racism with a system of justice. It is definitely touched on, and maybe it will be touched on further in this area. But I see Miss Ash, and then Miss Williams, and then Mr. Kwaku again.
Hi, everyone. I'm asking a question on behalf of Kwaku Jamal because he's not available right now. So on page 292, it says, do not ask any female to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with you. Always wait until she asks you to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with her. And he wanted to say that because our society generally shows men as the people who have to initiate these types of interactions. So he was wondering what other people's thoughts on how to engage in sexual play with a woman without, or I guess under those circumstances. Like, what are your guys' experiences with that? I hope my question makes sense. If not, I'll be glad to clarify.
One of the things too, like after reading this section, is one that we've been talking about, is to be straightforward and just say what you want, and tell the woman who you want to have sexual intercourse with or is trying to have sexual intercourse with you, is ask questions such as like, what are your intentions? Do you want to have sexual intercourse? What does this come with? Things like that. And then also letting them know, like, well, I'm not going to make a move, right? But I think it's just like being able to communicate these things and really ask questions.
And my attempt to answer is that tell the female that hopefully the non-white female that I have a code that states that I am unable to pursue you sexually, even if I want to. Like my code says that you have to make the so-called first moves. You have to show me that you are wanting to engage with me sexually or in some sort of sexual play. And if you're not, if you're unable to do that, then we will not be having sexual play. It's just you. If you want to practice this part of the code, the specific code, I think that would be one way to phrase it / frame it.
Do you feel like because we have to function around other people who may not know, I agree with what you were saying, 05. I was just wondering, based on the ideas of men having so-called game or being able to attract women, how do you think that, how do you think that women will respond to that? Do you think that it would make, I guess not women, but non-white females, do you think that it would make the non-white female feel like you're weak as a male?
I personally don't think I'm able to get into the head of a non-white female and in terms of how they will respond to someone practicing the specific code. But I would hope that it would indicate to them that this person is it's actually serious about the sexting and Yeah, that's the best I can answer that. Would anyone else like to answer Kwaku's Dromo's question?
For the second part of the question, I believe, you know, as somebody who attempts counter racism and attempts to become the universal man or universal woman, specifically speaking about the non-white male male person, as they attempt to become the universal man, I think that I believe women are usually attracted to somebody who's got it together, or is at least trying to get it together. I think that um, they're that it's not uncommon for women to seek out men of some, I don't, for lack of a better word, value, of high value under the system. I don't think it's uncommon for them to do that. So I think as you attempt to become that universal man, you're making yourself better. Therefore, women would be attracted to that kind of stuff. Hope that was codified. Trying to be as codified as possible.
I would like to attempt to answer the second part of that question, just to share my thoughts on that. One of the things, my first thought is they probably won't be receptive to it if they've never experienced something like that before. So I think it's always going to have to be just go for it, because that's what that person stands for. Like the man is saying, I'm going to be codified in this, so I'm going to proceed this way. But I think also, if the non-white person decides like, hey, this is awkward, I'm not going to continue with this, I think that's a sign to move forward. Because as like, it's one of those things like, I don't know how to say it's codified, but that it's not that good to like sit for one person that you don't have any relationship with, but you just want to have the sexual intercourse with. To just say, okay, I'll try something else, you know? So I think it's very, it's almost like a 50-50 chance, I guess, or a hit or miss. You never know how the person will respond, because everyone would respond differently. They just have to learn or be introduced to something different other than just like the man chasing them all the time and they having to be like, oh, it's always in my park, you know? So I think it's something that should be going on, and also something that should be taught to others. So especially for taught to women from the men's perspective.
Our biggest fear. I wanted to say that this is actually Ash responding. I'm sorry for the confusion. I wanted to say that I really liked what O5 said as like an example, because I think the male is still like asserting that, hey, I have these feelings or this desire, but I'm going to like wait on when you express that. So I just wanted to say that helped a lot with my understanding. Thank you. And I also appreciated your perspective too, Nanaya.
I see Miss Williams and then Miss B.
I think that because we're practicing the code to the best attempt that we can make, is that it's always wise that it appears to me that if a non-white woman, non-white female chooses to ask a codified person about sex, evidently she would not know he's codified. Something happened that she didn't know that, but it appears to me that somewhere in their conversation, she missed it. But just say she did miss it, it would be just like 0526 said, it would be his duty to inform her what he practices. Just like if a person practices a particular religion, there are certain things that the religion will require that you could not do or should do. So you would inform them the same way. But it would appear to me that would be a person who really was not paying attention to the codified person that practices the code. But the ones who would practice the code, they would already know from the beginning, because they've read the code, that it would be the duty of the woman to make the approach and then allow the man to work from his point on either accepting or rejecting. But we know the questions are going to come up from both sides, but be willing and open enough to talk about these questions, because as you look at these questions, and truly, this is my first time going through the code, especially looking at, I've looked at the part on sex on various points, but not the whole thing. And when I first started reading it, I had to get out of it because to me, it sounded a little ludicrous. I'm just admitting that. But as I'm growing and learning more about the code, then I can see the logic in it, right? As before, I think I was looking more of the emotion side of it. And as females, we tend to kind of think emotional sometime before the logic kicks in. But once I began to see the logic of it, and I'm assuming that other non-white people, other non-white females will begin to see the logic as well, then they will understand why it's necessary to ask all these questions and to get to know the person. Because beforehand, you can think you know people, you really can, but I guarantee you these questions will help you to hurry up and get to know a person and let you decide if you're really interested in this person the way you think that you are. But I like the fact too that even though these questions are suggested questions, we do have the choice to pick and choose what questions you choose to ask that person and what question they choose to ask you. But as far as I'm understanding is that the requirement is that whatever question they ask you, you should be able to ask them. But if there are questions that they choose not to answer, they need to make that plain from the get-go. Okay, question 7, 9, and 15, don't ask me. And I'm not, and I will not respond, and I'm not going to ask you that. Okay, that helps the person kind of identify to go look at 7, 5, and whatever the other number was, and say, oh, okay, well now, well, we might need to stop talking now because those are very important questions to me, and I definitely would need you to answer those, right? But it's all about communication. How open are you into communicating with this person that you want to get to know you better? Is by answering these questions. Now, I can say that for some people, this is going to be difficult. Just like the part where it says presenting yourself naked. Now, I don't have a problem with the fact presenting yourself naked as you're approaching the person that you want to be sexual with. But for me, I mean, after reading, I wouldn't do the nudeness answering questions. I personally wouldn't. I can't say what no other woman would do, another female would do. I'm just saying for me. And I would not even appreciate seeing a man nude in front of me answering questions. I mean, that's just me. I mean, I could be weird and everything, but I do think there are other women who may feel the same way. But you have to be open enough to realize I can pick and I can choose what questions I want to ask him. He can pick and choose what questions he wants to ask me. I can choose to answer or I can choose to refuse to answer. But either way, the questions will get answered and you will be able to decide if this person is worth my time or should I just move along to someone else who's qualified that might meet my needs better. I'm mute.
Very, very well said. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Does anyone have any more comments, notes to share before we get into the questions portion of this segment? All right. Yes, Miss Ash. Well, would you like to share another question from Quakey Drummel, Miss Ash?
Sorry about that. I realized that my question is related to the questions, so it's fine. I can just wait until we get to that part.
Okay, so everyone was asked to come with 10 questions from the list of 130 questions. I think we could take turns, maybe sharing three of the chosen questions we've selected to just share with the audience and to provide examples of the kind of questions we should be asking our chosen mates before we go to the bedroom. I'm gonna start with my first three. This is from page 298. I think every question listed is very important. So this question from the list of 130 questions is have you ever engaged in sexual intercourse, sexual play, or any homosexual, anti-sexual acts with any white person? If so, when, where, with how many people, and how many times with each person? For what reason? What were the names of the person? Were any of these people married? If so, which ones? Did any of them engage in oral or anal sexual activity with you, or you with any of them? If so, which ones? When, where, how many times with each? Where are these persons now? I'm not gonna comment on all the questions I read, but I think this question is really important because sex with white people can really damage a person greatly. So it should be important for non-white people to know if they're the person they're attempting to have an arrangement with has engaged with white people sexually. Another question for number 2 is have you ever been sexually abused, sexually assaulted, sexually molested, raped, mutilated, etc.? If so, when, where, how many times, and by whom? If by a white person, what was his or her name? And do you know where he or she is now? Also important to understand the trauma that certain people may have due to being violated in such ways. So I think this question is also important. And the last one I'm going to share before handing it over to Miss B is question number 19. What do you enjoy doing most? Can you name 20 things in order of importance to you? And I suspect due to the brain trashing, this will be a really hard question to answer for some non-white people because we have been so retarded that most of our hobbies are not that constructive, and they kind of maybe involve just looking at various screens or just not doing that much, to say the least. So I think it's a really important question that will allow anyone asked to think, which is really important. Ms. B, would you like to share?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I think that all the questions are important. But number 12, what is the greatest number of people that you have engaged in sexual intercourse with in the same day/night? I think that we ask this question, but sometimes way later. Like once we get comfortable with the person, then we might ask this question. I've been asked this question. I've asked people this question, but it's never like the first day. It's not before sex. Um, and uh, and also non-white females. I don't know about everybody else, but non-white females, we're taught to lie about this number or not be honest about this number because, oh, it might be high and, oh, you might be considered or viewed as a hoe or someone of that nature or whatever. And men, they are encouraged to either embellish that number or to sleep with as many females as possible. So that's an interesting question. That's a good question to ask before hitting the bedroom. And 13, have you ever engaged in sexual intercourse or sexual play with someone of close kin to yourself? If so, when? If so, where? And how many times? This 13 is a very good question because you'd be amazed. Some people that have had sexual play with their relatives, like a cousin, like a first cousin or something like that. And this question reveals that, if they're honest, obviously. And I think that's something to know. I think all the questions are great. And 15, at what age were you when you first engaged in sexual intercourse? And what was the age of the person that you engaged in sexual intercourse with? This question, you will find out whether that person um, is into sex play with like children or someone younger than them or whatever. So I think that's a very revealing question. And that's another question that we might ask, but it might be a year or 6 months down the line after we've already engaged in sex play. That's not something that we think to ask before hitting the bedroom. And that's all. Thank you.
Miss Ash, and then Miss Nanaya. Thank you so much, Miss B, for sharing. Let's have Nanaya and while Miss Ash is getting her thoughts together.
Alrighty. So just like everyone else, all these questions are just like brilliant, you know. You don't think to ask these questions often, and especially the way they are written. But the first one that stood out to me was on page 129, number 129. It says, do you always tell the truth? And if not, what is it that you are most likely not to tell the truth about? I found this one of many others to be something I would ask like very first thing I meet someone like. But instead of saying like, are you a liar? It's like you ask this question because it almost makes the person feel more comfortable. Because, you know, as a kid, if someone says, are you a liar? Are you a liar? They almost like, no, often by reflex is just to say no. But I think one of the things is that really asking this question and being okay with the answer, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that people don't like to talk about, and they might bend the truth because they don't want to talk about a certain subject or certain topic. So that one stood out a lot to me. Another one was, what is your ultimate goal for everything that you say and do? And what do you think my ultimate goal should be? That's another one. That one's straightforward, just to see like what goals that this person has for the things that they do and say. And then another one was, what problems do you have that you are likely to want me to help you to solve? And I think this is very important because oftentimes you have interactions with someone and it's almost like they put their weight on you, but you didn't ask to be with the weight. It's almost like, since we're involved, it's like this unspoken thing that I have to have that weight too. But I think it's just asking these questions before, so you can almost see like where your time and energy will be spent. And I have one more. Sorry, there's just so many.
Well, yeah, no problem. Just please share the page number that the question is on.
Oh yeah, of course. That last one I just said, what is the problem? That was number 87 on page 304.
Thank you. Continue.
Okay. And then the last one that I have is on page 301, and it's number 39, and it says, do you prefer to save money rather than spend it? I just find this to be very interesting because I'm a saver, and I like to ask people that, are you a saver or a spender? Would you like to go broke or save money? So a very interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to share some of their questions?
Yeah, for me, to start it off, I thought that some of the first ones are really good. I thought that the number 4 was an important question. Do you have on page 298? Do you have any offspring? If so, how many males and how many females? How old is each one of them? What are their names? Where are they now? Are you giving them any material support? If so, how much and how often? What are they doing now each day? And as I was reading that, I thought, wow, that's a lot of information to ask somebody. But it's important to know these things. But I also thought like it kind of reveals how responsible or how much this person cares for their offspring. If you have so and so many offspring, you have no idea what they're up to, or you don't know how, like, you don't know what's going on with them. It shows that you either don't care about them or you're not involved with them. So I think that is something that's very telling for any chosen mates that may want to interact with that person. And then on page 300, I liked 28 and 29. 28 was, what do you like most about yourself? And then 29 was, what do you dislike most about yourself? uh, you know, Given being trained under the system of racism, white supremacy, I think it's a very awkward question to ask somebody, but a very necessary question, because I think it'll really, like, I don't want, for lack of a better word, expose kind of the self-respect that somebody may have for themselves, or the amount of self-hate that they might practice in. So I doubt very many people will be honest about what do they dislike most about themselves, or what do they like most about themselves. So I thought that those are pretty good questions. That's always been something that I've been concerned with, how much somebody likes themselves. I think that's important to display how much self-respect you have for yourself, and uh, yeah. That's it for me for right now.
Oh, I have a question I'd like to add. Page 300, number 33. Does any person possess pictures or images of you naked, or of you engaging in acts of sexual intercourse, sexual play, and or homosexual, anti-sexual activities? If so, when were those pictures and or images produced, and why? I think that's a very important question, especially considering all the technology we have access to now, and social media. At least if your mate knows about it, in case your stuff gets leaked, well, they already know about it. So it's no surprise to them because you were honest.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Exactly, Dan. Those things have caused a lot of problems with photographs of people who may have taken pictures when they were younger that still might be out there floating around on the internet. And that would be something that you would want to know. But my questions are coming from page 300. Number 26, if you decide to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with me, is it likely that you may engage in sexual intercourse or sexual play with someone else after, between, or before doing so again and again with me? If so, how likely? If so, how many times? If so, do not do you expect me to do the same with others that you do or desire to do with me? That's a very important question, and that would probably be my number one question, if it ain't number two, simply because we have lived in a system of racism and white supremacy so long that we have men and no, not men. We have Black non-white males and non-white females playing the juggling game in in sexual relationships. And I think it's important that if you decide you want to play a juggling game, then play it with people who want to play juggling games. But for you not to inform the other person that that's what you want to do, I think is very, it's not trustworthy. It's not something that person would be happy about if they're not planning to do that. So I thought that was a very important question that people might want to ask a prospective person. Then number 32, for what reason would you use violence or physical force against me? I think that's very important because we have so many cases of domestic violence cases with non-white males, non-white females that lead to death, tragedy, dismemberment, all kind of craziness. But that's one of the things we definitely want to quit doing as non-white males and females is stop promoting the violence. We've been traumatized, been abused by the system of racism, white supremacy, and the racist man and the racist woman, that we should stop seeking to abuse each other. This is time that we should be seeking our relationships, that we no longer want to do harm to each other. We only want to help, assist them in helping to replace the system of racism, white supremacy with justice. So if we're gonna be fighting among ourselves, we're actually contributing to the cooperation of the system of racism, white supremacy. That is what they want to see us do, is to kill each other, maim each other, and be on the news with a woman shot a man 5 times over a girlfriend or something. You know, it's something stupid that didn't make sense. But I just think that when people are honest about their history of violence, and I think people that who do have a temper and know you need anger management, you probably don't need to be in no relationship with anybody, because until you deal with your anger management issues and find out what's causing it, so you won't do any harm to anyone else. And I know sometimes that it's easier said than done, that sometimes things are said or words are said to people, and people say, well, I just flipped out, right? Okay, well, you might want to flip back in, because that's not the way to have a quality relationship, by putting your hands on someone and doing them harm. So for me, I would say that if the question was posed to me, number 32, for what reason would you use violence or physical force against me? If so, May was asking me that, I would say in line of protecting myself against you if you were trying to do me any bodily harm. I mute.
Very well said, Ms. Williams. I also had some of those on my list to share. All of these questions, like what Miss B said in the chat, all of these questions will can relieve so much stress and future possible issues that could arise in our arrangements or relationships, whatever we want to call us attempting to be with the opposite sex. I'm gonna read some more. Number 30 from page 300. Do you expect me to help you buy the things that you want? Really simple question, but can definitely give you some insight on is this male or female possibly materialistic, or are they possibly relying on me to buy them and contribute to their nonsensical buying habits and spending habits? On another question, number 64 on page 302. What have you ever done and what are you doing now with the intention of helping to replace the system of white supremacy, racism with the system of justice, balance between people. I wish I had been asked this question because it would have like allowed me to ask what is the system of racism and white supremacy, and maybe I could have been educated on what that is, and also a good opportunity for those of us attempting to have relationships or arrangements that this could be a good avenue of maybe teaching someone about the system of racism and white supremacy, because it could be very possible that they won't understand or even know that we're in a system of white supremacy racism. So this could be a good segue into talking about the race problem, which is always necessary and always constructive. The final one before I hand it over to you, Kwaku, Dromo, is number 72 from 303. Number 72. What are the 3 things that you want most from me? Very, very important to understand people's expectations from you, especially your chosen mate. As always, if you know what that person wants from you, perhaps you can give it to them in a constructive manner, or perhaps you can understand and communicate to them that, yeah, I won't be able to give you this for so and so reason. So yeah, all of these questions are pretty significant. Definitely a good manual to have. Before the book club started this book, I remember seeing on Instagram, Black female, she was asking for like questions to ask a male in her life, and I just sent her the picture of all of these questions, and I hope that was able to just help her have some constructive conversation. Mr. Dromo, would you like to share?
Yeah, I had a somewhat of a question about one of the questions. From page 302, number 63. Have you ever been involved in the abortion of an offspring? If so, when, where, how, why, under what circumstance, how many times? Were any white persons involved? If so, how many? If so, were they? How were they involved, and where are they now? I thought this question was very interesting given the current climate of society. I think with Planned Parenthood being a very confusing matter, I was just wondering what some of the other individuals in the meeting thought about this. Personally, I don't know what I would really do with this kind of information. I don't know if it if I wouldn't care, or if it might sway my decision a little bit. So I just wanted to know what everybody else kind of thought about that.
Sorry, can you what page and what number was the question?
302, number 63.
Thank you.
I also will say, while I have you guys here, while I'm on the mic, 62 is also a very crazy but necessary question, I feel like. Scrap sex is on the rave now, so I guess I can go ahead and read 62. Have you ever participated in an orgy? If so, when, where, and why? If so, with how many people? Under what circumstance? Were any white people involved? If so, how many white people were involved? With who? If so, what did you do? If so, what did they do? Who were these white people, and where are they now? So yeah, 62 and 63 are some very interesting questions. Different feelings for both of them, but mainly I just wanted to know what everybody's thoughts were on 63. And feel free to answer 62 if you want.
I'd like to give my thoughts. So this kind of takes me back to the beginning of the chapter and kind of being in where, Neely Fuller was talking about how non-white males especially don't really have any place. Nobody can really criticize the non-white female for anything she does regarding sex. So it kind of gets me thinking like, so yeah, pretty much like in regards to sex and just non-white people in general, it reminds me of how Neely Fuller always says, you know, it's a salvage job, really. You know, everybody's severely damaged. So you know, we have to kind of take these things as they come. I can't really, you know, criticize. As far as abortion goes, I think that I don't think it's I like all kinds of life, but also at the same time, uh, bringing a child into the system while being severely unprepared for it. I don't know. It may seem logical to do something like that. Um, that's just my take on 63, and then 62 is just very I can't really comment on that. You know, I don't like you said, it's just that one's just inappropriate. Then
Ms. B, would you like to comment?
Hello. As far as 63, if I was a non-white black male and I asked a female this question and she said yes, then I would have to think to myself, oh, okay, so since you've done that before, maybe it's possibly, you know, she might do that with my child if we were to have a child or if she was to become pregnant. So that's why 63 I think is a really good question. Um, yeah, last night I was talking to a non-white male, and we were talking about sex and these questions, and not all of them, of course, but you know, I was asking different ones here and there, and just talking about relationships in general. And he was explaining to me, he knows a little bit about Nellie Fuller, but he doesn't have the book, obviously. So he was explaining to me how, you know, these questions kind of don't make sense because the person could lie and you'll never know until after the lie is revealed, or you'll miss the red flags, and that how non-white females are good at hiding red flags. And I just thought that was ridiculous. And yeah, so I just want to say that real quick.
Thank you so much. I love to see the code being practiced in real time. Thank you, Ms. B. To answer to comment on the abortion bit, what Kwaku said pretty summed it up pretty well. We shouldn't criticize non-white females for what they have done in regards to abortions. I think it could be sometimes more constructive to not bring another slave into the system of racial white supremacy, rather than to bring a slave here that's going to have to go into some sort of greater confinement, whether that's called the foster system or being adopted by white people. All of that is a fate, I would say, worse than death. So that's how I would comment on that. There could be very constructive or sound reasons why a person would have had an abortion, and the male could have also been involved in that decision. So it's not just the female we're always going to be talking about in regards to abortions. And in regards to the 62, the orgy question, you would be very, very surprised to what goes on college campuses. I went to a university called UC Berkeley, and that university had these things called co-ops, which is just a bunch of young people living together cooperatively. But there was certain houses that will participate in various incorrect behaviors and activities. And I am certain that many of those houses had orgies and had a lot of experimental sex with the non-white people who frequented those co-ops and who were unfortunate enough to live in those co-ops. Um, yeah, like the origin question. I don't know, like the effects of being in a orgy. I don't know how severely that could damage a mind, but I know it does occur more than we are aware of, and even in places we will not expect them to occur, like schools, like so-called renowned educational institutions. So I think that's my thoughts on that question. Would anyone else like to answer the question? Attempt to answer the question?
I would add in regards to 62 and 63. 62, the orgy question. Yeah, white men, they will go out and they will find black males to participate in these orgies. They will get these black males for white women. I've heard reports of that. I think they even have some called like Mandingo clubs or something. They get black males for those. I think I saw a news report on that. And then there's like white women that'll travel all the way to like Senegal and Africa, and they'll sexually soar black males over in Africa. Good movie to check out on that is this German film called Paradise Love. So maybe check that out one day. And number 63, in regards to like abortions and non-white females. I think this is like a topic or question that gets swept underneath the rug, because I mean, I don't know of any black females that did that. And I mean, it's a very personal subject for them. But one website to do research on in regards to that is blackgenocide.org. And it's like, I think it's made by a black pastor or something. And it just has like abortion pictures and like a whole bunch of info in regards to that if someone wants to research that. And that's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Continuing with the questions, I am gonna read some more. Number 74 on page 303. What do you think about doing most of the time? Great indication to see if we're gonna be getting involved with so-called couch potatoes, someone with like low or no ambition at all. So that could be an opportunity to avoid that sort of arrangement. Number 80 on same page 303. Do you expect the person that you have sexual intercourse to get with you? My bad. Do you expect the person that you have sexual intercourse with to give you money and or to spend much time talking with you or going places with you? If so, give you money for what? If so, talk with you about what? If so, going where with you and for what reason? I can't, yeah. This question is so important because I'm not a person who likes to go out much, though I don't really see the constructive results from going on these so-called dates, unless it's like a learning date and we're like going somewhere to read or share constructive information. So I think this question is really important because I've seen a lot of, I've heard this thing called this statement, we don't go out enough, or you don't ever take me nowhere. I'm like, this is really common amongst non-white people, these sort of statements, you know. So I think this is really significant question. Miss B and then Mr. Koiki Dromo.
What I also like about the questions that all of them are important and all of them are really good questions, but they have the little questions. I'm kind of gonna bounce around a little bit, but like 46. What are your 3 best skills? There's another one like on 305, 100, 104. Are you lonely? Um, you wouldn't think that that's like really an important question, and who would really think to ask that? But it is. It's important. You want to know whether or not this person is getting with you because they're lonely or unhappy or whatever. Another small question, but really big. What are the things that bore you most? And that's 106. That's also on page 305. So I like that it has a mixture of extremely important questions and also the little questions that that also share information about you as well.
Agreed. A lot of these questions also allow for like introspection, like to really like think about, what do I think about the most, or what do I like about myself? Um, which is something that we probably don't give ourselves time to think about, or even the awareness to think about. Um, Mr. Dromo, and then Ms. Williams.
Okay, hello, I'm back. I wanted to bring some attention to page 304, question 93. I thought this was a really good question. What activity do you think is more important? Spending time with your chosen mate or spending time doing something to help replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice? It's very apparent that in today's society we have been brain trashed to completely want to have fun. So even it's very apparent that sometimes couples might lose the overall goal. So I just wanted to ask for some of the counter racist couples and just maybe some of the normal couples that watch the stream. Um, are we are we willing to risk our relationships and stuff like this to combat racism and white supremacy? I'm not very sure on how to word my question, but that's the gist of it. Um, but yeah, I thought that was a very interesting question. What do you guys think?
Agreed. And to answer the question, should we risk our arrangements to attempt to solve the problem? And my answer to that is that we should be willing to risk anything, because a system of justice will be much better than what we have currently. And if a relationship or arrangement needs to be ended for that to happen, then by all means, I'm more than willing to volunteer, because the system of justice will be better than what we have. Ms. Williams?
I have a question on page 304. The question number
One second.
is
I want to see if anyone wants
86.
one second, Ms. Williams. Let's see if others want to attempt to answer Dromo's question, because I saw Kwaku come out of mute. Maybe he wanted to try to answer the question.
For me, I'll just say that I'd risk everything to produce a system of justice. I don't think anything matters more than producing a system of justice and replacing the system of racism, white supremacy with a system of justice. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. Sorry for cutting you off, Ms. Williams.
Okay, I too had that one underlined, number 93, the question, because that is our main focus, is replacing the system of racism, white supremacy with justice, a balance between people. So that has to be the goal of the main purpose that you have to focus on, because we are at war. People who don't realize we are at war would probably spend more time with the mate. But spending more time with the mate is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're spending time with the mate and it's not being constructive to helping to eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy, then it's kind of voided time. So even in our sexual interactions, for what I'm gesting from it is that even in the sexual intercourse, that is still is being resistant to the system of racism, white supremacy, because usually during sexual encounters, people are talking and, they're maybe encountering sex as well, but they do tend to stop and talk about something. And usually those are going to be the things. So maybe even in the midst of that, those thoughts may come into play of things that you might can do or suggestions that you might can come up with, So it's all important that we keep our focus on what's the real prize. The question number 86 on 304 that I was mentioning earlier was, to whom do you get most of the advice that you receive and put to use? Now, to me, that is very important, because a lot of times in the system of racism, white supremacy, we tend to choose people who are so-called friends or whatever, but they tend to not give us the best advice. So for me, I tend to run in small circles of people that I choose to get information with. And usually there are people who I trust their opinion, who will give me the truth, no lies, just, straight, no chaser, and give me the best advice that they know. And usually listening to those people, they have given me very constructive information. And when I followed their advice, it solved a problem. So that's the whole thing, is that we're working to solve problems without making any. So having bad advice from people who aren't qualified or who have the know-how to really give the best advice, then those are not the people we should be listening to. My associates in counter racism book club and others who practice counter racism, those are the people that I seek to ask questions and look for their opinion about things, because I know they have the same focus of mind that I do about replacing racism, white supremacy. So those are the type of people that I would consider using as people to give me advice. That's all I had to say.
Very, very well said. Mr. Kwaku, is this a new hand?
Yes, sir. I wanted to share some more of the questions. Thank you for that, Ms. Williams. Very well said. So page 304, number 90 says, what habits do you have that has in the past produced problems for yourself and or for others? I think this is a hugely important question that, I think some of these questions I may feel uncomfortable asking right away, although I know I shouldn't, but this would be one that I think is very important to ask right away, because being trained under the system of racism, white supremacy by the racist white supremacists, I believe we have a lot of destructive habits that have gotten us into problems, and some of us still practice those habits. So like I mentioned, it's a salvage job. Is that person willing to give up those habits in order to have sexual relations with you? Are they willing to, if anything, are they willing to give up those habits for themselves? And then on 108, number 108 on page 305 says, what is the greatest number of persons with whom you engage in sexual intercourse within a 1 day period, a 2 day period, a 7 day period, a 30 day period, a 60 day period, a 90 day period, a 300 day period? I also thought that was important, just to kind of get like an idea of how much, how much this person values sex, how important having sex is to them and how important the act of sex is, as far as self-respect, once again. That's also an important question for somebody who's engaging with that person, because, and I guess it didn't, oh, it was person. So yeah, so I think that's also an important question because that person is also having multiple sexual partners. And if if you are somebody who's having multiple sexual partners, this is a complete assumption, but would me as the individual be able to make up for all those sexual partners? I think that's something important to know. Mute my line.
Thank you, sir. More questions I have. I think we're really constructive to ask this question as well. On page 305, number 100. What do you think about most when you are in my presence? Can give you an indication of if this person just lusting over you, or do they have constructive thoughts and intentions with you? Someone. Okay, yeah, and this one, same page 305, number 99. If you give me help in the form of money, shelter, garments, transportation, medical care, educational support, and/or personal physical comfort, does that make you my boss in regards to when, where, and with whom I engage in sexual intercourse and/or sexual play? I've observed when non-white males are pretending to be men, they seem to get it into their heads that if they are providing some sort of financial support or giving the female some sort of material resources, that they are deserving to receive sex or sexual favors from that female. I'm reminded of that incident with the black victim of racism, black male, who calls himself Future, who flew out this non-white female. He flew her out, and when she did not want to, and he expected sex from her because he had treated her with material resources. And this is something that if this question was asked, would avoid a lot of conflict, a lot of disappointment amongst non-white people. Because just because you are treating someone to material resources does not mean that you are deserving our sex, or you should expect sex or sexual favors from that person. The area of entertainment has made this such a huge freaking problem for non-white people. These rappers have us believing that if we can give money or anything of value to non-white females, then we deserve sex from them, which is a really, really incorrect thinking, I believe. Question, same page 305. Question number 101. About how often are you able and willing to engage in sexual intercourse? Even though the code says that we should only be attempting to have sex about 2 times a week, some people may not have that in their code, and they may want or need to have sex more than 2 times a week. So this will be a good question to ask if a person is expecting more sex in their arrangement, to avoid future conflict, to avoid feeling like you're so-called unloved, which we all are, because there's no justice. There can be no love without justice. So very important question, because all of these questions can minimize conflict and future problems. Page 306, number, what, my bad. 305. Very important question. Number 113. What are your favorite mind and body building activities? This can give you an indication of does this person work out? Do they meditate? Do they do things that are constructive for their body and mind? Or am I dealing with a couch potato? Very important to know that. My final question I had to share from 306, number 128. Do you enjoy producing things, repairing things, preparing food, and doing other things for adding pleasure and comfort for yourself and others in your place of residence? And this is basically a way of asking, hey, are you gonna help me maintain our dwelling, our house, our home? Are you gonna like help me cook? Are you gonna cook sometimes? Are you gonna clean? Are you gonna clean sometimes? Are it just gives an indication of what to expect in regards to maintaining the household, because the system race and white supremacy has trained Black males pretending to be man. It has trained them to believe that they don't have to do any of the cleaning of the home and cooking because they may be bringing in some money, which is totally incorrect. I suspect. So this could give the non-white female indication of if she's going to be getting some help from this person in other areas besides maybe financial support. Yeah, I guess that wraps up the questions, unless others have more questions to share. I think the purpose for this code book and the purpose for all these questions is just to minimize conflict and all the chaos that the system produces. But before I continue, I will let Ms. B chime in and then Mr. Dromo.
Hi, I don't really have a question, but it's on the same lines of this, but it just these questions, they let me let me see, let me get my thoughts straight. How do I want to put this? The questions that I see online on Twitter, especially like, oh, $200, is that too much for a date? Like that just lets like compare that question to the question in this book, and I'm just like, wow. So I don't know, I don't want to ridicule anyone, but just like childish and so immature. Like, yeah, like the questions that you see online about dating and relationships, they're they're not constructive. And I think the questions in this book, you would have zero angry step parents, like I put in the comment section here, zero baby mamas, zero baby daddies, zero child support. If we all just ask these questions in this book before we hit the bedroom, if we waited the 200 plus days before we hit the bedroom, it would eliminate so many problems. That's all.
Agreed. Just thinking about all those people who hit the bedroom the moment they met and they have an offspring because of it. And now the offspring is suffering amongst the victims of racism, also suffering. So this whole baby mama, baby daddy drama could all be totally eradicated if the code was practiced in the area of AIDS, sex. So, and I agree, most things involving like dating and relationships that you will find on the internet will be very, very, very superficial, because those things I suspect aren't intended to like actually create constructive bonds at all. Those things are just refinement or maintaining the system of white supremacy by keeping everything at such a surface / superficial level. Mr. Dromo?
Hi, this is Ash. I really liked what Helen B said because I noticed that too online. Like people will have really superficial type of questions that they want to ask on a date, like what's your favorite movie, things like that that are supposed to determine the person's character. And I don't even think that they consider these types of questions. One of the questions that I thought was interesting, and I apologize if it was already read, was number 10. In what ways are you self-supporting? I thought that question was really interesting because I know that the code talks about, like providing shelter and also being able to give the most constructive help to those who need the most constructive help. But I also think it's important that people understand what they're capable of and what they're like able to do independently because I think it's often that there's a lot of relationships where the non-white male is supporting the non-white female or the non-white female is supporting the non-white male, and that produces a dynamic that's probably not really healthy because if things don't go well, neither party may be able to leave because one is dependent on the other. So it's always important to make sure that the person that you're gonna like see as your care mate is self-supporting in some way, so that if any type of financial issues happen, they can also be able to support themselves. That's it.
Thank you, Miss Ash. Very, very accurate. I think we can get into before we get to closing comments, I just want to read page 307 just to remind some of folks who may be watching this video that the basic purpose for the aforementioned. So it's 307. The code says basic purpose for the aforementioned: to minimize conflict, confusion, jealousy, hypocrisy, and misunderstanding in all matters that involves sexual intimacy between non-white males and non-white females during the existence of the system of white supremacy racism, to help produce more honesty and more effective counter-racist thought, speech, and action that involves sexual intimacy between non-white males and non-white females during the existence of racism and white supremacy, to help avoid the promotion of diseases and or the production of unwanted offspring, while at the same time helping to promote counter-racist thought, speech, and action through sexual intimacy that is self-controlled, trustworthy, predictable, more relaxed, and with results that are less harmful, both physically and mentally. Like this is what non-white people collectively need. Less stress, less conflict, to be trustworthy amongst themselves, to be predictable and not just always sporadic and chaotic and always on edge with each other. Notes: the aforementioned compensatory suggestions are to be used only by non-white males and non-white females, and only as a means of establishing a basic initial compensatory counter-racist interaction with each other. When they desire to also include sexual social intimacy that is non-hypocritical, less confusing, and generally more constructive. It should be understood that according to compensatory logic, there is not, nor should there be, any limit with regard to the total number of white people that a non-white person chooses to interact with in regards to the aforementioned form of a compensatory sexual social intimacy activity. In addition, the person that one chooses to interact with today may or may not be the same person that he or she interacts with the next day or many days later. Before any non-white people engage in sexual intercourse with each other for the first time, they should make absolutely certain that they have enacted all of the requirements of the compensatory counter-racist sexual social intimacy code as agreed upon with that particular person. It is important that all persons who agree to enact this form of compensatory countermeasures to sexual social intimacy, understand and support all of its parts, and do so without conflict or confusion. According to compensatory countermeasures logic, there is not and should never be any social or sexual stigma associated with any part of the aforementioned compensatory counter-racist sexual social intimacy code. So very important, very important. If non-white people were truly honest with themselves and each other, we can do so much work to replace white supremacy with justice. But because we've been so trained away from honesty, it has produced a lot of confusion and conflict. So this book is so necessary and so profound, to say the least. I'm happy to be learning so much from it. That being said, I think we could get into closing comments. Would anyone like to get us started?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. For my closing comment, Area 8 sex is very informative. The total dysfunction that Black people and non-white people find themselves in when it comes to the area of sex can be greatly remediated with just, asking some of these questions. You don't even have to ask all of them. Just some of these questions, I think, would go a very long way in solving a lot of the issues we have together as a group, as a people. Yeah. So I think it should be encouraged to I think when you're younger, we play that 21 question game. Let's change it to 130 questions and let's start asking those. Start getting serious about this issue and this dysfunction. Let's solve it. That's it for my closing comment. Look forward to the next discussion and thank you for the constructive conversation.
Ms. Williams, would you like to chime in?
My closing is these questions and other questions that you may come up with are like a lie detector test, but orally. I think I heard Ms. B said that someone said to her that the person may choose to lie and you would not know. I don't think so. The way these questions are designed, and it's kind of like how people do when they do a lie detector test. They will ask one question, then they'll wait between other questions and come back and ask you a similar question based off the same question they just asked you. So I think that if a person even tried to attempt to lie to a person who practiced the code, who have read this book and understand it, that if they tried to lie, I think it would be discovered. So I don't think they really can. I think that people who don't practice the code, that if they lied to them, they probably may miss it. But codified people, we pay attention to questions and we follow the logic based on what the person is saying from the question that we ask. So I don't see how they can lie through these questions. I mean, anything is possible, but I think the chances are very, very slim that you will not be able to pick up that they're lying and would know already that I'm not interested. I found the chapter, although I noticed the second part of it, to be very interesting. I can't wait to dive into the other parts of this chapter so we can better understand how to have quality relationships with each other as people that practice the code and who are working to produce justice, balance between people. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Very, very well said. For my closing, I thought I was a very serious person before being introduced to the code. The code definitely reminds me and shows me that I have been very, very far from serious. I've just been a confused victim. but I appreciate this the code, and I appreciate this portion of the code because a indication and like a slap in the face that hey, sex should be taken very, very seriously, and it's not something to be played around with. Just because we see in the area of entertainment, sex being so like pushed down our throats and everything is being so hypersexualized from the males to the females and their lack of clothing. But sex is something very that we should take serious. It's just something we should spend an adequate amount of time preparing our minds and bodies before we do it. If we were to practice this, so many of our problems could be possibly solved overnight, and we would become much stronger in our ability to produce justice. And that's my closing comment. The next person who goes, can you call on someone, please? Actually, I'm just gonna call on someone. I saw Dromo.
Yes, thank you, O5. For my closing comments, very insightful questions. I think I was having a discussion maybe with O5 some time ago about kind of realizing things about the code and kind of realizing there's certain things that you were kind of already doing. And it feels good to know that some of these things I was at least practicing, but I didn't know why. I like to think my ancestors or energy was leading me in a certain way. But definitely looking forward to next week's discussion. And lots of great questions to ask. Lots of great questions to ask on the next encounter, I guess. So those are my closing comments for this week. Thank you for the constructive conversation.
And for my closing comments in regards to the pages we covered, definitely good questions. It was what, about 130 of them, and I'm pretty sure there's more questions that could be asked because for those of us that attended the Welsing Institute, I believe there is 217 questions that someone came up with there. So I would definitely be interested in getting that list and comparing it to what we covered in the book. And as far as the 1984 edition, these questions and stuff and whatnot, they are not in there. So this has been added on to the revised and expanded edition. And that's it for my closing comment.
Thank you, sir. Ms. B, would you like to share some closing comments?
Just really quick, I enjoyed the conversation. Excellent observation, excellent questions. And yeah, that's it. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank everyone. Gonna end it there.